From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay.
You know, with these tariffs and stuff, it's really depressing.
A new ag barometer shows several issues are weighing heavy on the minds of producers. The government shutdown rolls on and the impact grows.
Who would want to get up and go to work and not know when they're going to be paid?
And a small surprise coming out of the trade talks between the U.S. and China.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Talks with China were only planned to go for 2 days, but Reuters is reporting they will continue for a third day today. U.S. and China trade officials meeting for the first time face-to-face since President Trump met with China's president last month. At that time, the two sides agreeing to a 90-day truce in their trade war. One U.S. trade representative saying the talks, which began on Monday, were going well. President Trump making a similar comment on Twitter, saying, quote, "Talks with China are going well," end quote. The editor of China's state-run Global Times saying the continuation of the talks sends a signal that the two sides are working hard to solve the disagreements between the two countries. After the first day of talks wrapped up Monday, there were unconfirmed reports China had made another large U.S. soybean purchase. Our insider saying it was anywhere from 700,000 metric tons to 1.5 million metric tons. If true, that would mean China has purchased about 5 million metric tons since the talks last month. Now keep in mind, China normally purchases about 35 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans. Along with that possible purchase of U.S. beans, China is also approving 5 new genetically modified crops for import. And that could mean more options for U.S. growers shipping grains overseas. You see a list of the brands on your screen. Reuters reporting 2 of the approved grains have been on the waiting list for permission for 6 years. China has not approved any GM crop traits for import since July of 2017. Now on the list of new approvals were 2 types of GM canola, 2 varieties of soybeans, and 1 of corn. The U.S. remains the world's biggest producer of GM crops. Now to the latest on the government shutdown. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue announcing the deadline to apply for payments under the Market Facilitation Program is being extended. The original deadline, January 15th. But due to the shutdown, farmers have been unable to apply. Now, Perdue says the extension will be for a time period equal to the number of business days FSA offices were closed. That's once they reopen. President Trump addressing the nation last night at the southern border to talk about his proposed border wall. His remarks coming in the 3rd week of the partial shutdown over his insistence that congressional Democrats approve more than $5 billion in spending for that wall. So far, Democrats have refused to pay for it. And the effects of the shutdown are spreading even more. Air travelers seeing the impact in the form of longer lines at security checkpoints. Security officers are still on the job, but they aren't being paid right away. The Transportation Security Administration saying more screeners are calling in sick at some airports, including Dallas-Fort Worth International. The TSA has a team of officers who can go to airports facing a shortage. Air traffic controllers are also working without immediate paychecks. A group of workers impacted by the shutdown met with their congressmen in North Carolina, some of them corrections officers.
But you have to come to work, and then you have to put yourself in a life-threatening, dangerous situation every day. We deal with inmates every day. And we put our lives on the line every day. It's no different than any other law enforcement agency. Yet, we're not being compensated for that. Who would want to get up and go to work and not know when they're going to be paid?
Hundreds of thousands of federal workers will face missing a paycheck on Friday. A new report shows farmers have a weaker attitude about the ag economy than a month ago. AgDay's Betsy Gibbon joins us now with more. Betsy.
Clinton, the Purdue University and CME Group Ag Economy Barometer, which surveys farmers declining in December, 7 points below the index reading a month prior, but almost unchanged from a year ago. The barometer says farmers have a lower opinion about expectations for the future, more so than in November. But researchers saying farmers are more concerned about the now.
But the index of current conditions is well below where it was this time last year, a decline really of almost 30 points on a year-to-year basis. Agricultural
trade still a top concern. The percentage of producers expecting exports to increase drops in December from 66 to 59%. Instead, more farmers are anticipating exports to decrease a 16% change.
You know, with these tariffs and stuff, it's really depressing.
Ag producer sentiment also dipping, saying current economic conditions on their farms are deteriorating.
It's the prices that are largely down for a lot of our crops. Our revenues, crop revenues, are virtually the same that they were last year, so the expenses are gone up.
The prices used to be about fundamentals, and now we're worried about what the government's going to do, and it just makes it really difficult to market around.
Well, Smith says some farmers are hopeful for change.
The farm economy for the last 4 or 5 years has been pretty difficult, and you know, the farmers that I have interaction with, their attitudes are incredible, and I think that's part of being a farmer.
When it comes to investments, the index is above a 3-year low earlier in 2018, but still below growth neutral.
As you think about the implications of that, producers are a little more optimistic and a little more willing to make large farm investments they were in late summer, but are clearly less willing to do so than they were this time last year.
This survey was completed before President Trump signed the new farm bill into law. We'll see if the passage has any impact in the next report.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Winter wheat should have been planted now, but last year's planting is still going on, as meteorologist Cindy Clausen shows us in today's crop comments. Cindy.
That's right, Clinton. Ron Learns shared this video with us on Twitter. Now, he says he finally finished planting his winter wheat. Up until this point, the field had just been too wet. He's using it as a cover crop. Ron is a 5th-generation farmer living in Indiana County in western Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at our wind speed forecast for the day, and as you can see, it's going to be a fairly breezy day once again, at least to start the day. In a lot of the Great Lakes area, the eastern Corn Belt, those winds are going to be translating into the eastern part of the country over the next 24 hours. So there's 5 o'clock this afternoon. You can still see the Great Lakes are going to be fairly windy, and also into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and heading into the overnight hours, most of that energy continues to slowly push on off to the east. Starting your Thursday, it'll be windy from the Mid-Atlantic up into the Northeast, and again, that continues to push on to the east, a little bit on the breezy side in parts of the plains. I'll have more in your forecast coming up, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Keeping track of the shifting market prices has never been so easy. Get the latest commodity prices sent directly to your cell phone with market updates. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
We're keeping a watch as well right now on crops around the world, including Brazil. Some analysis on what we could expect come harvest time, and later, our love of chocolate. It all has to start somewhere. A closer look at the cocoa bean coming up in the country. In agribusiness, despite reports of China buying more U.S. beans, futures were down on Tuesday. Here's more now in the CME.
We started the market a little bit stronger, especially in soybeans and corn, on the idea that maybe trade talks are going smoothly over in China, but then we got a headline right around 9 o'clock Central Time that said that the U.S. and China may be further away than expected on a trade deal. So then you had a pretty immediate 10-cent drop in soybeans that pulled corn down a little bit with it, and then we sat most of the day in soybeans. Corn kind of drifted a little bit lower as the day went on, while wheat kind of stayed higher for the most part. So, you know, again, a very mixed day. Going forward, we're really going to be keyed on what happens here with the trade talks over in China this week. We're also watching South American weather very closely. At the moment, there's a little bit of a threatening forecast for some of the drier areas of Brazil and some of the wetter areas of Argentina. It all depends on what happens with trade talks in China. It all depends on what happens with South American weather, so we're going to have to keep a very close eye on that going forward. Now, hogs started out of the gate really rather strong on the idea that China may have bought as much soybeans as they need for now, and now they might turn their attention to pork. But without having export sales, we're really not going to know that. So we got a little bit of skepticism happening there. Once again, this is Ted Seifert of Zaner Ag Hedge coming to you from the CME floor.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk today, we've got Jim McCormick with Allendale. Jim, as we look at what's going on in the world of commodities, obviously our crops aren't in the ground right now, but Brazil's are and South Americans are. What do we know about how that's going? And it's changed recently, it seems like.
It has changed. I mean, early in their growing season, early in December, there was a lot of talk of 125 to 130 million metric ton coming out of Brazil.
Huge crops,
now,
right?
To put in perspective, their record crop was a shade over 120.
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot bigger. Well, they had a very dry December in parts of the country, 30–40% below normal rainfall. Now, it wasn't completely dry. So it's not a disaster, but the top end's coming off. There's now the talk this crop is probably below 120, maybe around the 117 to 115. Now it's still early in the game, but what you're looking at is a trend. The trend is it's not getting bigger, it's getting smaller. So their crop's getting a little bit smaller. And then in Brazil, then on top of it, Argentina. Now Argentina had the major drought last year, which really drove the bean prices higher last spring, we all remember. They're actually having the opposite problem this year. They're too wet. So they're struggling to get their crop in and having some problems getting the wheat harvest out. So the South American crop's going to shrink back. Now, I don't want to get people too bulled up on this and the fact that with the carryout of almost 950 million in U.S., the world carryout at record levels.
Right.
China's got this feed problem due to the swine flu. Yeah. But we've got an opportunity. You get the right news story, cut a deal with the Chinese. I think you got a decent shot of beans pushing back up toward 10, and I would encourage producers when they get that, take advantage of it. Okay. You get $10 beans, lock it in. If you want to play a summer weather or something like that, you can always use options to re-own it.
What do we think as far as trade goes? Because that's really what we've been watching on this soybean market is where these beans are moving. How are we sitting as far as trade trends go?
Well, right now, it's not as bad as it would look. I mean, there's no doubt about it, Clinton. When you lost China, you lose your biggest buyer, you've got a problem. Right. We have made up with some of that with some of the smaller sales. Argentina is actually one of our biggest exporters right now because essentially Argentina is selling everything they've got and they're refilling their bins with our beans. But we need these trade deals to get done. The fact of the matter is, without these China trade deals, we're a little bit behind. And like I said, the best thing I'd hope for is get this deal cut here sooner than later and get us back into selling beans to China.
All right, sounds good, Jim. Appreciate the insight. We'll be back with more AgDay in just a minute.
To talk to Jim McCormick one-on-one, contact Allendale Incorporated at 815-578-6166 or email Jim at jmccormick@allendale-inc.com. AgDay, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
Welcome back to AgDay. Here with meteorologist Cindy Clausen. Look at the root zone moisture map. And Cindy, you can see how wet it's been kind of through the middle of the country, out on the east coast, but west, they're getting a storm system moving across now.
Exactly. We've seen a lot of the country get wetter, if you will, over the past month or so, but we still have some dry pockets. Here's a look. If you look out in the west, especially as you get over towards the Rockies, we still have some pretty dry pockets there in that root zone. We've dried out just a very small amount in parts of the nation's midsection. We've had some dry weather over the past week or so, but you can see overall the eastern two-thirds of the country has been fairly wet with the exception of Florida and the southern parts of Texas. Let's take a look at what we have in store for us today. It looks like, for the most part, another dry day in the nation's midsection. We have a storm system moving through the northeastern United States. We're going to start to pick up some snow on the backside of that, some lake effect snow in the Great Lakes continuing into the northeast. Still a wet system coming into the Pacific Northwest. And so we're going to watch that, slow moving, but eventually dying down as it continues to move on to the east. Heading through the day, watch for those lake effect snow showers, that cold air coming in on the backside of this front, even all the way down into Florida. Dry conditions for most of the plains. Will probably pick up maybe a few showers here in parts of Texas. There's that front coming into the western United States. That's going to kind of lose a little steam. We'll watch another cold front with a low pressure system that's moving through southern Canada. That will be something to watch then over the next few days. Otherwise, again, continued dry conditions in much of the nation's midsection, even as we head through most of Thursday. Here's a look then at your precipitation, and it's been mostly the northeast and the far west over the past 24 hours. That's going to be pretty much the same over the next 24 hours. A lot of this is going to be in the form of snow, though, but look at that heavy rain still expected, especially in northern California. Now, as far as snowfall, you can see how we're really going to start to pick up here in the northeastern United States, even in some of the areas that haven't seen a lot of snow, as we see that lake effect engine starting to kick in once again. Temperatures on the cold side behind that front, everybody's going to be cooling down quite a bit. We'll see high temperatures in the 30s, 40s in the central part. Look at that, only teens when you get up to the north central United States. Watch as those temperatures really dip down into the overnight hours. Even down into Florida, we're down into the 30s, single digits over in Sault Ste. Marie. And then temperatures tomorrow, we're going to be doing 20s and 30s, especially in the Ohio Valley there, and only in the lower 50s in northern Florida. So that's pretty chilly for them there. As far as the longer term, looking at that jet stream, there's that trough that we're seeing in the eastern United States, the northeastern United States. We do do have a ridge kind of out in the west. That kind of flattens out, but notice how we see another one building in as we get into the weekend. However, as we get towards the middle part of next week, that really starts to flatten out as it moves to the eastern United States. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Thatcher, Arizona, partly cloudy today and a high of 61 degrees. Buchanan, Michigan, lake effect snow for you with a high of 24. And Archer, Florida, partly cloudy and colder. Look at that, near freezing tonight.
This video going viral right now. Police in McHenry, Illinois had a run-in with a disorderly subject, a squirrel. Now you can see a couple of officers trying to help the little guy get out, but they didn't want it getting anywhere near them. The squirrel eventually did get out of the building unhurt. The police department posted the video to its Facebook page, joking that it was a test of the officer's ability to handle disorderly conduct. The ongoing government shutdown now causing new concerns for farmers. And Kroger joining forces with Microsoft to get you shopping in their stores with a little help from your phone.
AgDay, brought to you by Corvus Corn Herbicide from Bayer. Get an early season win against weeds with Corvus for end of season rewards.
Another concern during the partial government shutdown, the possible effect on the H-2A agricultural guest worker program used by produce growers. The Packer reporting there is some concern about a potential delay in processing guest worker applications. An official with the Northwest Horticultural Council in Washington says there's concern that if the shutdown goes longer, then the Department of State runs out of government money, that would mean those applications won't be processed. And if that happens, it could cause problems getting workers to the farm.
The Department of State is running out of money to interview people in their consulates to approve for the program. So that's a dicey situation. So far, I don't think it's had a material impact on the program, but definitely concern among the growers and the people that run those programs.
Guest worker applications are now being processed from California, Florida, Texas, South Carolina, and other states. Have trouble finding stuff at the grocery store or sticking to a list? Well, Kroger's trying out new technology in a couple of its stores that could be the solution. The Packer reporting Kroger's joining forces with Microsoft to offer something called an Edge Shelf System. Now, it will create a guided shopping experience for people. You see a bit of how the technology works in this video provided to us by Kroger. Using your phone, you can make a shopping list on an app. The icon will appear on the shelf when you're near an item on your list. There's also a system that allows employees to help them find items to quickly know when to restock the shelves. Now, the new technology will be tried out at 2 stores in Monroe, Ohio, and in Redmond, Washington. Still eating all that holiday chocolate? Well, we take you where a lot of that chocolate begins next.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
Chocolate for many is the perfect treat. Have you ever wondered where it comes from? Well, Ghana is the second biggest exporter of cocoa in the world. Ivory Coast is number 1. But Ghana produces 900,000 tons of cocoa per year. First, freshly picked cocoa is fermented for about 6 days. That allows it to develop that cocoa flavor. It is then dried for another week. For many years, almost all of the cocoa beans or semi-processed cocoa from Ghana was exported. But that's not the case anymore. Local chocolate makers are popping up.
We are in a moment of change right now in Ghana. When I first came to Ghana in 1999, I saw only one brand of chocolate, which was Golden Tree. King's Bite was the popular one, and that's made by CPC, the cocoa processing company, which is a partially government-owned company. When I came back to Ghana in 2018, I was so surprised and happy to see many chocolates available in, I could probably name for you 10 companies right now that are based here in Accra or nearby and working primarily on an artisanal scale. They are small batch makers.
One of the largest cocoa companies in Ghana, named Niche, used to export most of its beans, but now it's also producing 200 tons of finished chocolate products every year. Some of the smaller chocolate companies, the chocolate's handcrafted and made to order. Sounds pretty tasty there. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.